Chapter 4 The Three Reflections. Many of the faults you see in others, dear reader, are your own nature reflected in them. Rumi.
A significant purpose of our external reality is to feed back information about us. We are so caught up with the drama that is taking place in our lives that we are either unaware or do not pause to reflect on this truth. We tend to believe at different times that our life is a comedy, tragedy, horror, or fiction. Yet life is presented to us as a wonderful mystery to unravel and gain self-knowledge. It is sometimes easier for others to cue into our mystery because they are not as emotionally involved with it. Usually, we will not understand or agree with them if they are pointing this out to us. This is because the true awareness of our situation needs to awaken from within us. We live the majority of our lives in unconscious self-deception. We all come into life with agendas. Agendas are the themes we have chosen to understand and overcome in this lifetime. These agendas will play out in different ways depending on our life experiences and the reality we create around us. Have you ever noticed how themes tend to repeat with people or their families? Some tend to struggle with physical illnesses. Others struggle with abuse or accidents. I know families where many of the women suffer from spousal abuse. Practice trying to recognize the themes in those you know. It is easier to see them in others. Ask your friends to tell you what themes they see happening to you. One of my main agendas is time management. I tend to be the one that others contact when they are in distress. Most of the time, after dealing with one person's distress, another person's needs take its place. I did not recognize that some of my teams were time management and creating dependency. I have always been attached to the crisis and ignored the message. I arrived at a stage where it was very time consuming and draining dealing with other people's crises. I could not continue like this. Sometimes, because I was so busy during the day, it was difficult to free up time to respond to the crisis calls. People who knew my home telephone number would call me at night. I would then spend the hours dealing with their distress and made very little time for my family or myself. I was obviously responsible for this enabling situation. I could have simply ignored the telephone. I felt guilty if that ever entered my mind. Others would point this out to me as they were not as emotionally attached to my agenda. However, I was having difficulty listening to them. I'm sure that I frustrated them many a time. This is the issue with agendas. They keep playing out until we are open to addressing them. The change has to come from within. We need to know ways to access them more efficiently. I decided at one time that I would not answer any calls at night and free up the time for my family and myself. Initially, I felt guilty, but I managed to work my way through it. A few years later, I was blessed with a spiritual initiation which was extremely powerful. Afterwards, my teacher, Guruji, asked me if I understood the test I had taken in order to receive my initiation. It never occurred to me until he explained the following. He said that the divine universe needed to know that I had time available to continue my spiritual practice. When I finally stopped taking those calls at night, it was actually my test. The universe was attempting to find out if I had control of my own time. I never even recognized it as a test. Because I followed my truth, I received my initiation. He told me that the universe would not burden me with something extra like my spiritual practice unless I had created the opportunity for it. This does not mean that I have been able to manage my time consistently. Every now and then, this theme revisits. I end up finding myself overwhelmed and with little time. However, I recognize this much earlier and I am able to make changes quicker than I would have done before. There is a well-known story of a young Buddhist monk who wanted to learn as much as he could from his teachers. So his thirst for knowledge would lead him from teacher to teacher. Eventually, they told him that there was nothing else they could teach him. He still wanted to learn new things. So it came to his attention that there was a hermit monk who lived an isolated life in the mountains. The young monk decided that he would find this hermit and that he would be able to complete his teachings. He searched and eventually located this monk and asked him to be his teacher. The hermit agreed. The young monk stayed close to the hermit, and as the weeks passed, his frustration grew. The hermit gave no indication of fulfilling his promise to teach him. Exasperated, he approached the hermit and reminded him of his promise. The hermit agreed and said, "Let us begin your lessons. However, first of all, let us enjoy a cup of tea." They sat at a rustic table, and the hermit took his steaming teapot and began filling the young monk's cup. Eventually, the cup was full, but the hermit continued pouring so that the tea was pouring over the sides. The young monk turned to the hermit and said, "Can't you see the cup is full? It cannot hold any more tea." To which the hermit replied, "Ah, it is just like your mind." If I relate that message to myself, like the young monk, my cup was full of activity. By emptying a small portion, I created a space and opportunity for the divine to fill it. I received my initiation and the opportunity to use my freed up time to practice my meditation. It is important to recognize that the divine will fill us if we empty ourselves of those things that do not improve us. If you practice the forgiveness technique, it will free up space in your life for divine grace to fill. Many of us tell ourselves that only when things change we will be able to spend more time in spiritual practice. I know, as I am one of them. The universe is not going to do our work for us. We have to walk our talk. So here is our drama or autobiography playing out around us in a very symbolic and mysterious way. In the middle of our distress, it is very difficult to try to get some objective handle on what is taking place. I developed the concept of the 3 reflections for my friends and I over the years. We have found them a very helpful tool to use at any time. The 3 reflections. The first reflection. Am I managing this issue better than I had done previously? The second reflection. What am I avoiding? The third reflection. What is hiding in plain sight that I am not seeing? The first reflection. Am I managing this better than I have done before? Perhaps I could explain this with a story which I have modified so anyone who knows me and has a similar personal story will not feel I am identifying him or her. The theme in this story is a common one that everyone can relate to. A woman was having difficulty in her marriage. Her husband was an alcoholic. Lies, behavioral deceptions, financial drainage, job losses, abuse, and many other traumas associated with addictions were present in their relationship. This woman struggled in the marriage trying to make it work. After many years, even with interventions by family and friends, the situation became worse. Ultimately, she left the relationship. During the period after that, she would grieve for what she had lost. Her insights into why this had happened grew. She worked her way out of a very fragile psychological state to a more stable one. She began exercising, working more diligently to look after herself and kids. One hot day, she was jogging and ran past a restaurant. She stopped and went inside to ask for a glass of water. It was early afternoon. She saw a man sitting at the bar nursing a drink. They began a conversation. She felt very taken by this man. Subsequently, they started dating. A family member pointed out to her that it was rather strange that someone would be drinking at 3 p.m. in the afternoon and not be at work. She made excuses for why this was so. Her denial system was intact. She would not accept any suggestion that there was a red flag for this relationship. Subsequently, they married and the same pattern repeated. Again, there were years of trauma and hardships. Yet again, with the help of family and friends, she worked her way through it. I will always remember her making this comment that this was the last time this was ever going to happen to her. She had learned her lesson. A few years later, she had again worked herself into a more psychologically stable position. She attended a conference. At the hotel where her program was taking place, another conference was also occurring. It was a conference on addictions attended by addicts who had been in sobriety for 10 years or more. During the intermissions, she began talking with a man, assuming that he was attending her conference. She subsequently recognized that he was at the addictions conference. She was fascinated by how he was able to manage his sobriety. Because she had undergone 2 previous relationships that never resolved themselves for her, she was very taken with this man. She marveled at how diligently he had worked to remain sober. She connected with this person who was on the verge of relapsing. They began dating, and I am sure you can figure out the rest of this story. When I look back after the first reflection, I would respond that after her third relationship, things had not changed. She had not been able to start resolving her agenda. Imagine that there is a spiral coil which is wide at the base, but gradually winds up into a tighter and narrower coil until it reaches its peak. Most of us are stuck at the base of the coil, and we keep spinning in a circle without rising to a tighter and narrower spiral. When we continue circling at the base, we do not change. With the first reflection, we are not dealing with our issues any better. Agendas will always repeat themselves until that particular issue is resolved. If the issue repeats and we are able to manage it better, we begin moving up that spiral where it gets narrower and narrower. Although we re-experience the same agendas, they are shorter in duration and less intense until the issue spirals right up to the apex and the agenda is dealt with. Let us look at it from the opposite situation of someone who has an addiction. His life is traumatic and he's spiraling at the base of that coil. He attends rehabilitation and begins to improve and maintain sobriety for months before he relapses another time. He again returns to therapy and work at his rehabilitation. He responds to his therapy quicker and continues for a longer period to remain sober. However, as the episodes continue, the time between the episodes are much longer and the resolution of each episode is quicker. If he asks himself the first reflection, he will answer yes. he is managing better than he had done previously. Our human minds expect us to have an addiction and then not have it. Agendas do not work that way. They repeat themselves, but they provide us with the opportunity to know whether we are participating in its resolution or not. The person with the addiction recognizes that he's making strides and improving, although he has not totally overcome this agenda. On the other hand, the woman who has been married to the two alcoholic men has been repeating the same pattern. It is as if she is having a new experience every time it happens. Should she have asked herself the first reflection, her truth would arise from within that she's not managing things better than she has before. For the addict who is working on his recovery, he recognizes that he's managing this agenda better than previously. This creates a sense of hope and recognition that he can continue on his journey because he's heading in the right direction. He's emptying his cup drop by drop. Our minds tend to create this all or nothing phenomena. The first reflection helps us to recognize if we are dealing with our reality and whether things are improving. The second reflection: what are we avoiding? Avoidance is an emotional issue for many people. When we confront ourselves with this reflection, we are challenging our denial system. Use the example of the woman who is into her third marriage and each husband is an alcoholic. After the first marriage, she recognized that she had chosen a traumatic relationship. We always know our truth, even if it is very uncomfortable. We may not be clear on the logic or reason for it, but we always know that there is a nagging sense of discomfort. We can attempt to fool everyone else, but honestly, we cannot get away with fooling ourselves. Reflection, too, is an introspective question. We are confronting ourselves and we need to pay attention to the emotional feeling that accompanies it. A friend goes to a psychiatrist for advice. He observes that his daughter is becoming moody and hangs out with a crowd who is rumored to abuse drugs. The psychiatrist advises him to be proactive. He should be upfront with her and express his concerns. He should tell her the ground rules about his expectations. If these expectations are not met, there are steps to be taken, such as therapy and changes in lifestyle. Your friend begins to rationalize his concern about his daughter as just suspicion. His daughter knows all about drug abuse. He's sure that if it were a problem, she would let him know because they have a great relationship. Actually, if he had a great relationship with his daughter, he would be able to speak with her about his concerns as he was advised. Now let me place a word of caution here. The issue is not about whether the daughter is abusing drugs. It is about the friend's anxiety and concern. By not dealing with it, he carries this around with him daily. Ultimately, sometime in the future, if she is abusing, it will need to be addressed. At that time, things quite likely become worse. Police could now be involved because of an accident or some type of disaster. Yet your friend remains at the bottom of the coil. By dealing with it upfront, the issue is out in the open and he would begin moving up the spiral. As time continues with him being upfront and communicating with his daughter, the answer to the reflection one would be a very clear yes. This is because he's also addressing the second reflection about issues that he avoids. The third reflection: what is hidden in plain sight that I am not seeing? The third reflection requires a lot of work. When we are struggling with an issue, it is common behavior for us to ask why this stressful event is taking place. It would be nice to have a deeper understanding of the reason. The universe always has a reason why this is happening. We need to search for it. Connecting to that message significantly changes the issue. We may come to face with unconscious behaviors that are trying to become conscious. It may even be presenting in a metaphorical way. Usually, our reality does not offer the reason in bold colors. It presents itself as some type of symbol or metaphor. As we practice the third reflection, we become more adept at figuring it out. Try observing others and see if you can figure out what is hidden in plain sight for them. We are more objective and less emotionally trapped with observing others than with ourselves. I described the situation about making some time for myself and not recognizing it was really a test to see that if I could use my free will and make the time available. Was this hidden in plain sight? I could argue that it was not, but when I received my insight, there it was. Sometimes the third reflection can be very easy to connect with, at other times it may take longer. A few years ago, during the last week of the month of May, my accounts were hacked into and money taken from one of them. My bank immediately shut down my savings and checking accounts as well as my credit cards. Until new accounts and credit cards could be issued, all I had was pocket money for my family to live on. I was given a list of credit and loan companies to immediately contact. This was to prevent the hacker from borrowing money using my name. It was a Monday morning. I was fully booked that day. I was the primary account holder, therefore I needed to speak with each company personally. It included providing personal information to identify me. Some companies asked for different information. It was an absolute nightmare. I was looking after my patients. For long periods, I was kept on hold. Sometimes I was connected to a different department rather than the appropriate one. I felt violated by the hacker. I was frustrated by how unwieldy companies had become for helping their clients. My mind was busy with feeling distressed and creating reasons for it. I began going through the three reflections. I asked myself if I was handling the situation better than I would have previously. Immediately, I realized that I was approaching the point of saying no. I caught myself and the panic settled down. I recognized that, like others, I never wanted to fail in life. Saying that I was not handling the matter better than before meant that I had failed. Some internal process switched to courage and motivation to succeed. We all know of situations where people faced with threats to themselves or their loved ones awaken some powerful survival instinct within them. By just practicing the three reflections regularly, I was primed to make that switch. I felt that this situation had taken place for a reason. I needed to take advantage of the opportunity presented to me. I asked myself the second reflection. I realized that I had marked anxiety whenever I dealt with financial establishments. I recalled having this feeling even when filling out my annual income tax return. I would often avoid dealing with these issues until the last minute. Many times I would pass this on to someone else. I always needed rescuing from this anxiety. It was now mine to deal with. I was in a corner. Going through this process, in a conscious way, I connected with the games I played. I wasted so much energy. As soon as this insight hit me, suddenly the rest of the calls just worked out so efficiently. The process was of lesser intensity and shorter duration. My practice automatically led me to the third reflection. What was hidden in plain sight that I was not seeing? One glimmer of a thought entered my mind. It was the last week of the month. All my automatic withdrawals could not be processed. The list spun in my head. I could not contact everyone I needed about my dilemma. There was the mortgage, car insurance, electrical and telephone bills, healthcare insurance, and a long list of other bills. I again began feeling anxious. I stayed with the anxiety, and then a behavior of mine became apparent. I always made sure that I paid every bill on time. I had the strong opinion that it made me decent and honorable in the eyes of others. I still believe that those reasons are correct. However, I was driven to this by anxiety. I frequently had difficulty getting others to pay bills that they owed for my services. The more I wondered why people would not pay on time, the more driven I was to prove that I was not that type of person. Cause and effect were keeping the game going. Again, I had no choice. I was going to run into problems with non-payments. I surrendered to this fact. I released a whole emotional bundle that I had been holding on to. I was quite surprised about the response I received from people when they called about their payments. Everyone except one government agency understood, was sympathetic and supportive. The government agency simply sent a letter stating that I had defaulted on my payment and I would not be allowed the privilege of automatic monthly withdrawals. I would need to pay in advance by a check or money order. I add this because we sometimes have the expectation that if we make a change, everything will resolve itself fully. The universe does not work that way. This will be explained as you continue reading subsequent chapters. The third reflection asked me what was hidden in plain sight that I was not seeing. It was self-righteous behavior covering up anxiety. The anxiety was like a computer program virus running in the background, using my energy and influencing my thinking and actions. My ability to deal with similar situations have now changed for the better. I am more proactive in responding to similar situations, even though there is still some anxiety present. I am able to be more at peace with it. As I mentioned, it is easier to practice recognizing the message in others. We find out who we are by how we see others. This is a process that you can attempt in a personal and private way. There is no judgment. All you need to do is recognize the truth behind your choice. One of the ultimate hurts is deceiving us in a conscious way. If even privately you have difficulty doing this, an upcoming chapter will help you understand about your internal self. First, look at your job that you currently have. Look at your role and responsibilities for that position. Examine the people you work with and those who will be affected by the decisions that you make about them. You could be unemployed, a stay-at-home mom, or be anywhere across the spectrum to someone such as a person who holds a disciplinary position. You all have some roles and responsibilities. You affect everyone with whom you connect. Your behavior creates a positive or negative experience for others. Now, the next step is to identify those that you get along with and those that you cannot tolerate. Ignore the ones whose company you enjoy. Look at the people that you have difficulty with or you play a strong role in affecting the outcomes of their lives. These people are your most powerful teachers. Think of one person and recall your feelings, criticisms, or decisions you have made about them. Choose a person you remember, no matter how long the duration of time that has passed. Perhaps you felt the person was dishonest, could not be trusted, and was dangerous if allowed to work at your place. You have a strong negative emotional attachment to him. Well, here it is. Those aspects that you disliked and exposed in that person is really part of who you are. You are the one who is dishonest, untrustworthy, and dangerous. I know that the default position is going to be that this does not describe you. This is an example of the second reflection. We are avoiding self-reflection because of uncomfortable emotions. It might be helpful to add some clarity to this concept. There are terms in psychology that identifies this state of mind. Terms such as motivated cognition, confirmation bias, or moral licensing are well-recognized behaviors. Research confirms that those who feel that they work from a highly moral or ethical position actually make decisions that are lacking in ethics or morality. Now, these people do not see it that way. This is because their motivated cognition leads to self-deception. Most people who live life responsibly will recognize that this person in authority is not acting appropriately. However, they would be unable to convince that person about their opinion. We will find in a person's life whatever we decide to look for. We will then convince ourselves that we are right when we find it. The three reflections are a dynamic process that flows into one another. We all need to begin by challenging ourselves about our prejudices using the third reflection. At the same time, we are also addressing the second reflection about what we are avoiding. When we confront our issues, the first reflection becomes a gauge as to how we are progressing. When we recognize someone who we are affected in a negative way, recognize that it is a part of us that we are confronting. We can then initiate the change by participating in the forgiveness experience. When we carry criticism and resentments, we pollute the divine harmony of our universe. We need to ask forgiveness for our behavior.
The next person I meet may be God in disguise. The Cosmic Game.